Right there we are. Hello there, Outliers. Niiamah and Shang here, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of your journey. We focus here on the Outliers Edge podcast on the journey of going from an outlier to a trailblazer and from a trailblazer to a world shaper. What does all that mean? It comes down to taking the things about you that have created that unconventional success and being able to do it intentionally and incorporating it into everything you do so that it continues to build out and have increased dividends as well as impact and profit. So today we are playing with one such outlier, one such trailblazer in another way. It's Victor Lagos. Victor, it's an absolute pleasure to be in space with you here. Thank you so much for making the time to share more of your journey and what's coming up for you.
Thanks for having me, Niiamah. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, so am I. I like to start this conversation off with just a bit of a reflection as to my experience of you so far. You good with that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I have to take you in really quickly here. So, Victor, what I get about you is that you're someone who plays a big game and has fun while doing it. The not only you having fun yourself, but you make it accessible for others to join you in the fun. I find that like your goals keep growing. And at the same time, when I meet you, sorry, when I experience you, like it can feel like casual. It's like, and this is one of my favorite things inside of our community. We have this saying that's called "It's just a Tuesday." It's like it might be a big deal, might to other people, but for us, it was just Tuesday. And so I appreciate that about you here, where I feel like there's um class, like you do things to a high level of excellence, but you also have a real skill in being really accessible all the way through. And I don't think that everyone has been able to do what you do in that regard. I'm grateful to be in space with you.
No, thanks for sharing. It's good to hear the feedback, so far. But I'm happy to share more and more and let your audience get to know me too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why don't we jump into that here, Victor? Like, let's give some space. We're going to spend some time focus on you, focus on what like how you see the world, some of the things that you're going through, and the challenges you're taking on right now. What I would appreciate is if you can give us a bit of uh, context. I think that's really a bit of context for you. So share with us some of like share with us your journey, your yeah, share with your journey, but including there like some of the wins right now that you're having or that you recently had, so we get a chance to see like, okay, this is the game that Victor plays.
Yeah. Okay. It's a big story. So I guess we've got to understand the context. It's probably more around the entrepreneurial and the business owner journey for me. So I play in the finance industry, and finance not so much in the investments like shares and things like that. It's actually more in the property side. So I help people who want to get finance to grow their wealth through property strategically, right? And that is residential and commercial property in Australia. And for me, turning that into a business has been a pretty long journey because uh, it's pretty much the biggest money making industry there is, right? Like banking and finance and credit is exactly how the entire world is run. And and someone put it to me the other day. He said, "I've really gone into the belly of the beast." Um, and I'd never thought about it that way, but I do feel like I'm basically an outlier within the system that's trying to change it inside out, basically. And um, and that's
Oh,
the fun part.
that
It's the fun part.
that's intriguing to me. That's intriguing to me. Keep going, but I want to find out more about like how you're playing that way in your own outlier way.
Yeah, so I guess it's just about being aware that I, I can help people one on one. I can help people one to many, but I can help more when I can help others who have an existing client base and an existing audience because I'm not there to compete. I think what I realize is the higher you go in business and in life, it's more about collaboration and not about competition. And the lower levels, it's all about competition, right? What's the next guy doing? How can I be like him or her? You know, um, look what they have that I don't. Like it's all this comparison. But the higher you go, it actually doesn't matter. Everyone's got their own journey, and you can respect people for wherever they are and what they've achieved so far. But you don't know the full story. Let's face it. You'll never know the full story unless you walk in their shoes. So you got to write your own story, and and you collaborate with others. This is for me. It's like I find people that really believe in my vision because it's not actually my vision. It's a vision that I've tuned into, which is to elevate the consciousness of the planet. It's actually to help uh, it's to help everyone that's part of the ecosystem, right? Who comes in and it's a win-win-win scenario. It's not a zero sum game where someone wins and someone else loses. Everyone has to win. And I realize that there are people out there that are quite successful in their own right that operate this way. You just don't see them as much in the public eye. Some of them, like you and I, will be out there and doing podcasts. Others are not. And I'm on a journey to find those people and to connect with them and to support them and to be supported by them, and then to basically have more doors opened with others that have more influence or have big circles and maybe even big pockets, so I can help to inspire them to do good in the world. There's a saying I came up with yesterday is like, go hard to do good. Right?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Give us that saying one more time.
Go hard to do good.
Allies, I'm going to invite you right now to to take that in for you right now and see what does that mean for you? Where's an area right now where you can go hard to do good? Uh, uh,
Yeah, well, I set a goal yesterday, an intentional goal to be earning $350,000 a month, and and it sounds like a lot of money. Um, for most people, it is. And if you're and I'm the first within my um, lineage, my generation, to actually even consider that level of wealth. And I've got clients that are earning way more than that. And the people that I'm within my support network, one of them I found out is earning $50 million. And I don't know if that's a year or a month. It might even be a month. So that's quite a small level relative, because there is no limit. The only limit is what we conceive, right? What we perceive to be a limit is in our own mind. So, and I have achieved financial goals from setting these intentions along the way, but I was playing at a smaller level, but it was high at the time. I set a goal in 2016. I said I want to be earning $60,000 a month. And at that time, and I wrote it down, and I wrote the goal down, and I let it go, and I just I've gone about the journey. And at the time, maybe the limit to how much I'd ever earn in a year was maybe around 70,000. So to imagine from 70,000 in a year to 60,000 in a month, that's a pretty big gap. But that was a goal I set, and then in November last year, I actually achieved that, and I earned 60,000 in 1 month. So I know that it works. Took a while,
yes,
but it does work.
yes. Let me acknowledge you on that. We were coming on here and you were talking about like the various stages of a journey, because you had said something that really lit me up around um, heavy hitters. You had used those words, heavy hitters. I know us. I almost said actuaries. That's so funny. I like that. That was like a life over a life over a life. There's multiple, but it's outliers here. Like a number of us are playing a big game, and we want to hit heavy. Um, and at the same time, like like to me, it's almost like there's like an identity of being a heavy hitter. And I've like little kids, and I'm like my 3-year-old can be a heavy hitter. He's not going to hit the same way someone else does that's much grown, but for a 3-year-old, he can hit.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the goals that you had set in the past and how it sits up with the goals you have right now, like in the track record and the progression there, I like it really calls to me. It really calls into that space there. Like at least what I get from you is just a strong sense of knowing. You're like, I've
Mm,
done this before. And it's not the
mm,
number. Yes, I haven't hit this number before, but I have the process of you know your process. And you're like, when I do my process, it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think everyone has to look for that process that does work for them, because the power of manifestation, it all just comes down to, beliefs, your internal beliefs, your self-image, your focus, and really just the two things that we can control, and that is our attention and our intentions. Those are the things that, everyone wants to focus on, the external world and the influence that's going on out there, but a lot of that's outside of our control. And the two things that are within our control is our attention and intention, and of course, following that is the actions. So it's having that aligned action with our intentions and putting our attention on that goal. And it's not about the goal itself or the result. Everyone always says it's just, fall in love with the process or the process. But it's not so much about falling in love with it. I think it's being ready to become the person, like you said about identity. You have to become the person that is worthy of that particular result. All right. You'll only ever receive what you believe you deserve. Right. And you'll only ever receive what you're ready to receive. All right. And what you can handle. Right. So that's the thing you got to consider. Like, if, I was talking about this yesterday to someone, and imagine that his analogy was like, a rock star. Someone wants to be a rock star and have, you know, you know, perform in front of a big audience and everyone cheering their name, but they don't want to pick up the guitar and learn and practice for hours every single day and actually get better and better at their craft, and do performances in front of the stage. They want to skip and be the rock star straight away. But
Well,
imagine they went to that rock star level and actually performed, they'd feel like a fraud. They'd go home and feel like everyone's cheering me, but I didn't even earn this. I just up there and I started playing guitar, and they wouldn't feel right about themselves.
you bring up the rock star. I like this conversation because we're gonna like there's some things in here that are playing out for me in my own life right now and with some of my clients. So I'm gonna bring that out. Um, you bring up the rock star, and what gets me is I know a rock star and someone who was up and coming. And what was really interesting was that we were talking and I saw him like grab his guitar. And when he grabbed his guitar, there was like for the first like 45 seconds, he was like looking himself in the mirror and then checking out his various stances. Right. So it wasn't like the playing the guitar part, got it. Right. But he actually spent time like looking in the mirror and be like, okay, looking up. Nope, that's not it. Look it up a different way. Nope, that's not it. Let me hold my guitar this way. That's not the stance. Because it's like, and it was really interesting because it started to show me just like what it really took to play at a level that is, yeah, what it really took, like the hidden unknowns, the amount of work that people are really doing, where it's like, well, I can play the guitar just as good as them. It's like, yeah, that's fine. But like, can you energetically still stay on topic, on beat, projecting outwards when you have 50,000 people yelling at you in the other direction? Like that's a different skill set.
Exactly. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's like I like what you said about the energy of it, and that's really the essence of manifestation. It's actually being being the person that you need to be, now, right? So it's embodying that version of you and letting go of the other version of you that doesn't meet that energy, or doesn't match that energy anymore, right?
Can we
So
talk through
that's
this a little bit here? Because I want to make this a little bit real. Like I'd like to see how that lines up for you. I'll share two examples of my interpretation or like areas where I put it into play for me a little bit. Um, one of them is happening again right now. Like I'm in the middle of another identity shift here myself. The one that feels the most palpable to me is in 2022, I made a decision to become an athlete. And I decided to take up the sport of beach handball. Uh, the distinction for me there was that it wasn't about like finding a fun way to go meet people. It wasn't about being fit. It wasn't about staying active. Like I decided I'm going to be an athlete. I'm like actually not I'm going to be like in the future. It's like as of now, I am an athlete. I might be the world's worst athlete, but I have stepped into the game as an athlete and I will build myself going forward as an athlete. A couple weeks ago, I recognized that I had actually I hadn't really my weight, I had gained weight. I was being sluggish on the field, like and things were happening with beach handball. I was like, what's going on? I was like, oh, I slipped. I slipped out of the I'm an athlete. I need to go to a practice because that's gonna help me train for like the competition and whatever else. It's like I like instead I went back to being a dad who wanted to find like a way to like because it's good to stay healthy. And so I treated beach handball just like I treated the gym and everything else that was like a physical activity, which was like, yeah, it'd be nice if I get to it, but if I don't, like it's also not the end of the world, you know? And
Yeah.
it's just like it was better to be the world's worst athlete. I showed up more in alignment with what it would take to be successful then than when I wasn't when I totally took myself out of the game and had a different type of identity altogether. What do you get from that? What lights up for you in that? Maybe you have an example of your own.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good example because, like you said, you when you really decide, right? And I think the word decide is really important because it comes from where does it come from? The origin, the etymology of the word. It decision, yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the original source. But basically, it comes from scissors, right? Decision. So it's like cutting. So when you cut, you're essentially leaving the other option behind, and you've decided on the other one, and you're only focused on there. And and I think that's the part of the identity shift is that when you truly decide, it's not a negotiable. It is what it is. There's
So,
no like your body and your subconscious mind and everything starts honing in on that what you've fully decided and committed to. It's not something you have to convince yourself anymore. It just is. You
so
see?
let's I do like I want to bring this one last time here because like when I get into like the use and like and external like I lose it loses its concreteness for me. So tell me about a time right now, and it might have been just what you just did right now with the new revenue goal, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe give me another example of a time where you made that decision, like particularly like help make it real for me. Take me to a story, take me to a time when, so I can kind of see how this actually plays out for you.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. So yesterday, when I made that decision to actually before I even got to that full decision, I I sat with myself and I basically meditated. So I don't meditate just to avoid, thoughts. I actually go into a particular state. And so I'll meditate. I did meditate and I had these worries and before I went to meditation, I had these worries and fears about um, having too much expenses and not enough income to cover these expenses within the business, right? Because as you grow, you have to invest in software, staff, and all these sort of things. And there's always a risk when you take on too much. It's why businesses fail, right? They've got too much outgoings, not enough incoming.
So
And
Victor, can you hear me right now? Here.
yeah,
We
I
broke
can.
up slightly here, and I apologize for that. But if I'm getting you right here, you're talking about like as you're making this goal, your mind actually went to expenses and expenditures, and like how that would also increase to actually be able to meet this goal. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and just I had an emotion that made me feel like I was taking on too much or like I was increasing my expenses and I didn't have enough assurity or certainty that the income would meet that. So there's like the surplus deficit game, right? You always want to have surplus because if you're in deficit, you're having to borrow money in order to cover those losses. And some types of businesses can operate that way because they get investor capital. But if you're bootstrapping, you need to earn enough to cover your costs, right? And so then I had that emotion, and then I said to myself, what would it feel like if I had 300,000 going to my account next month? What would that emotion feel like? And that's what I meditated on. I got to that state where I wasn't having a story or a feeling that I didn't have enough, but I actually had 300K in the account, and it put me at ease. It put me at this level of self confidence where like everything's fine. I've got plenty of of surplus, like it's not even a thing to be concerned or worried about not having enough, because that's like abundantly in surplus, right? So, so I embodied the emotion during that meditation, and that's when I guess the intention was there. And then it wasn't just that, right? Like you do that, that's fine. Now it's like, how do I then bring that version of me to every day, and how I act, and how I do things, and how I communicate with everyone. So then the next step yesterday was I actually spoke to my strategic advisor. So I have a strategic advisor who is not a coach or a mentor as such. She's helping me with strategy, because she's worked with large businesses and organizations to set up strategy and plans to move forward. And I told her that. And then she said, do you want 300,000 revenue or 300,000 profit? And I said, actually profit, because where my expenses are at the moment, I see probably around 50,000 a month would be a level that I want to stay at based on staff and systems. 50,000 a month with expenses, which means I would need 350,000 revenue to have 300,000 profit. And because I've got multiple businesses that I'm working on, she can actually help me set up a strategic plan and how to create revenue models, different revenue models, and to actually make it real, not just this idea that I have, but actually set things in motion. And, she's done it for her own business. She turned her business to $1 million a year business within 6 months. She's done it for large organizations. So it's not like she can't do it. So the mind can always say, oh, this is hard, I don't know what I'm doing. But if you've got it right in front of you and someone can guide you, it's just a matter of believing that it's possible. And we talked about the way the brain works. And I'm not sure if you've heard of this. It's called the RAS, the Reticular Activation System, right? And then you've heard of it?
Bring it into our space. I've heard of it, but bring it to our space from like what the RAS stands for you, and how you leverage it.
Okay. So we talked about the RAS and also the self-image. So there's a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which I've read. It's one of the classics in personal development, and it talks about a self-corrective mechanism. So if you imagine the two examples I gave, so I'll go back to the RAS, but for the self-corrective mechanism, it's like an airplane. It has a particular trajectory, and if so, it knows where it's going, it has the target, and even if it's off by 2 degrees, if it continues on that trajectory, it's going to be very far off the mark. It's not going to reach its destination. So it has a self-corrective mechanism which will bring it back into that pathway to arrive at that destination. It will do that automatically, like autopilot, basically. And our essence, or our brain, has the same ability based on our self-image, on who we believe we are. So if we have set limits, or if we've experienced certain income levels, it will self-correct and say, I want to be a millionaire, but I've only ever earned 100,000. So then you try to, as soon as you get close to 100,000, or veer off that's towards a million, it will say, no, let's go back to 100,000, because that's the belief of the self-image that you have about yourself. So you have to upgrade that self-image and change it to $1 million or whatever that goal is. And what does it look like? And then the RAS works similar in that once you're focused on that, your brain will start filtering out things that aren't relevant to achieving that, and it will start focusing in on things that are. And an example of that is, say you wanted to buy. The example we gave yesterday was, if you set a goal of buying a car, and that car is say a Mercedes C63, and it's red, and it's not common. You don't see a red C63, but because you've decided to buy one and you're saving for it and you're going to take out finance to buy this red car, you start seeing more of them on the road. And you're like, wow, another C63 and it's red, and another one. But before that, you never saw them. They were so rare. And it's because the RAS knows that you've decided on that particular goal, and now it's looking for it. It's scanning the environment, and it's filtering out all the other black cars and the yellow ones and everything, and just purely focused on. So that's the context of the RAS. And then
Do you
I'll
mind if
let
I
you.
Yeah, let me come in on this one here, Victor, because you brought in two really important contexts. And with like the way I like to play is um I try and go for what's the experience we can get beyond the information, right? And so I'll share a bit of my experience as you're bringing it in. And um so two things. The self-image, you had a name for it. It wasn't just self-image, was it? You called it the
Um, oh, the self-corrective
Yes,
mechanism.
the self-corrected
Yeah,
mechanism, and that was based on the image that you see of yourself, right? And
correct.
like the identity that
And
comes along with it. So I want to bring in both of these and just play with both of these a bit here. And outliers, we're like as Victor and I are exploring this, I want you to take some time right now to like think about it for yourself. All right, let's just break this down. One, like how do you see yourself right now? Right. Two, like what is it that like what is your goal here, and does the way that you see yourself line up with that goal? And then let's continue to play like as Victor and I are exploring this here, let's make this real. Like even if for the next 5 minutes you decided to like take this and say I'm gonna play with this, I'm gonna bring this into my world right now, I'm gonna gain some skill set or some experience with this here, that's gonna do you better than just like us continuing in the conversation to the next idea, right? So I'm hearing you, and I'll just be honest. Like, are you good with us playing with those two ideas right now, or with the
yeah, yeah,
RAS and
definitely.
self-image? I'll bring
I'd love
myself
to
in.
break into real emotion, into real
Uh,
experiences. Yeah.
all right, cool. So let's do it. So right now, because I'm like, oh, I know this, I know it, and then, as you say it, I'm like, oh, I'm not doing it. So first things first is I love how what you choose to do with meditation. All right, and one of the reasons I say I love it is because you aren't doing it from the conventional or the conventional wisdom, the standard conversation around it. You're like, I choose to use this time for a specific purpose. And it's not just to clear my thoughts and to achieve that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Give me what's so there's that really calls to me because there was a time where I was meditating and I found myself actually I now call it like priming myself for the day, and it's a different element than the than the closing things out, right? Or one, two, self-image. So I'll bring it into the business. Right. As the time of this recording, I'm wrestling with two different images. Right. The one image is um I tell me like I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur. That's the one that I want to go for. Right. Um and it wasn't that always. At first it was I'm a 6-figure coach who's living a freedom, like has a freedom lifestyle. And then in the last year I got a chance to have like half days. And I was like, this is not it for me. Like I don't want half days. I want to go out and make more impact. And there's something still about the 8-figure entrepreneur that I think is still missing the impact side for me. So it's probably closer to like movement leader or something like that. Right. So I want to say that because that's like the ideal. That's what I like kind of bring in. But as you were talking, I'm like, if I'm honest with myself, my self-image is still is one of up and coming entrepreneur, trying to figure it
Mm.
out entrepreneur, like right now we're recording, I'm in my garage and like I think about it. For some reason, I felt better in my home office than coming to the garage. I'm like, there's these like that image is clashing like with my reality right now. It's clashing there. So um I want to make that real because I realize that this podcast is actually a form of documentation for me. People will come back in 5 years, be like, how did you get here? I'm like, well, go
Mm.
listen to episode number, for something, and you'll hear where I was. Like when
Love
I was
it.
like, I just got in my garage for the first time. I didn't have what you see around me right now. So I want to bring that in firstly, right? And I love for you to like let's go back and forth a little bit. Ask me some questions around it if you want. Like, but I wanted to start off with like right now. I think that's truth. I have an image that I want to be in. I have an image that is actually being reinforced, and I'd love to like hear a little bit about like what you're hearing from that or what you've done in the past when you've run into like those kinds of issues.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So it's a good question because everyone has to find what process works for them in order to um, I guess change from where you are to where you want to be internally. and then the external results will follow, right? We've talked about the RAS, we've talked about self-corrective. That's all external things that will happen, but you got to change the internal. So we need to figure out, how do we change the internal? And for me, and the process that's worked for me to date, is I've come up with an acronym, and that acronym is how I operate, and it's APTI. So A stands for acknowledge, and I'll go into each of them. A is acknowledge, P is process, T is transmute or transform, and I is integrate. And so the first one is the acknowledgement. So you've just done that. You've acknowledged that you have this internal conflict, right? You have an image held inside around the garage, around, being an 8-figure entrepreneur or being an aspiring entrepreneur. So there's an inner conflict, and there's nothing wrong with having that. You're bringing awareness to it. So now that you know that, you have to then, you've acknowledged it. So then when I say I meditate, I go into that emotion and I process it, because the processing is where people forget. They run from emotions. They run from fear. They suppress emotions. They get distracted and keep themselves busy to avoid them. But they're there for a reason, to be processed. And everyone talks about expressing emotions, and I think it's actually better to process emotions, because expressing means you're putting it outwards, and you attract back what you put out to the universe. So if you're putting out, expressing emotions of anger or despair or worry, well, now you're actually, in my view, you're actually attracting similar experiences, because you're putting it outward. But if you process it, you're taking ownership of it. You're being fully responsible for that. And that, this is which takes you to the next stage, is by processing it, you feel it. So you find it. So what I do is I find it wherever it is in my body. It's in my chest. It's in my solar plexus area. It's in certain parts of tension in the body. And then I sit with it and I process it and I breathe into it. But it's no judgment, because the moment you judge, you're resisting it. And what resists persists. So don't resist it. Just allow it to be processed. And that might be some tears, right? That might be some anger feelings. Some that inner child might be like scared and things like that. So it's about nurturing yourself. If you imagine one of your children is experiencing emotions, you're not going to say, be a man or something. Just deal with it. You're actually going to create a space for your child to actually experience those emotions without judgment, right? And you do the same for yourself. So then that's the processing part. And then the next part is the transmutation piece, because there's a saying that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transmuted or destroyed. Not destroyed, transmuted or transformed. So therefore, once you've processed it, you still have this energy. It's there. Now it's time to transmute it into energy that serves you. And I always say my intention is I now transmute this energy, this emotion, into energy that serves my highest good, that serves my soul's purpose, that is in alignment with who I really am, So there's no ambiguity. It's not like I'm not tying it to a specific goal. It's just being who I actually am, right? That authenticity. And that's when I change that energy. And the last one is to integrate with it. So now it's, you've had that conflict, you've had that separation. It's now time to unite once again, right? And that's the integration. You become that energy. You take it back, and now you start being a force for good, more and more. And I've been doing that, for years. The last probably couple of years, maybe last 12 months or so, I came up with that acronym, and I just stick with that framework. And, even yesterday I did that, but I needed some help from a friend of mine who's also working in my business currently, because she's done a bit of hypnotherapy, and she helped me kind of navigate that, because I was also stuck in an emotion where that self-image was worried about the expenses and all the costs that were lining up, but then the other part of me that had complete faith and a system to then create 350,000 a month, it was a conflict. So I imagined that emotion, and then I imagined that emotion, and then I basically, did exactly the same thing. I processed it, and then I integrated and merged, and now I don't feel that negative or worried feeling about money like I did.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for taking the time to like really slow down, be with this here, and like make this real. I think like this is where um I've always had a big, I don't know, it's not always, but I think there's an element of bringing it to like, how does it actually play out? And I'm glad that we said, like, I appreciate you bringing in like your actual goals, right? And setting the context for us to see like, hey, this is not just like something you heard on on another podcast. And then you're like now I'm just going to repeat to you this thing. It's this thing that you actively practice, and you're actively using it to create the goals that you have like you set out for yourself. Yeah, and I think that's really real. I think that's really real. I also want to note something that you brought in here, and Outliers want to put this in here. Like, throughout this conversation, you've been really clear that like you've gotten support in many different, from like a strategic advisor to the friend that like is that working with you in the business, and so on and so forth, to like to your team, or you're like, when I look at the expenses and I look at to go to this thing, I'm going to have to increase the expenses there, right? But I look at that as like, you're going to need more team, more support from that place. I just want to really like call that into this conversation. We're about to start wrapping up overall, but I it's been it's been walking alongside you in this conversation. I wanted to see if there's anything you want to speak to around um both getting support, but also putting yourself in positions, whether it's asking for, being a part of groups, whatever it is that you're doing, to actually receive support, and how that's been impacting you throughout.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably one of the most critical things that I've applied that's helped me achieve everything. It's not a solo sport. It's not something that you do on your own. Yes, you have to deal with your own internal blockages and emotions and self-image and all of that. That's obviously very, very important. But when it comes to the execution, you need other people. And there's a few different, again, coming back to acronyms, there's three that I've sort of focused on. And one of them everyone's heard of, which is a lot of people have heard of, it's called OPM, other people's money. And that's when other people invest or you're borrowing from banks, right? The other one that people don't think about is OPT and OPE. OPT is other people's time, and OPE is other people's expertise. I don't know everything. There's a lot that I don't know. So I want to have people around me that know more than I do in the certain, uh, you know, segments or silos when it comes to business, right? And to be successful in business, you really need to handle three different things, I believe. And one of them is having very robust systems and processes to follow, and easy for others to replicate. Um, and of course, automations that come with that. Um, you need to have basically a good marketing and sales system, right? There's customer acquisition. You need to actually have clients to serve, and multiple ways to bring clients in. And then you need to have people, and this is where you have a good culture of people who deliver on a high level of service, have similar values, that are high achievers. Maybe they're more entrepreneurs than they are entrepreneurs, so they'll help your business grow, but they don't want to go out there and own a business and take on all the risk that comes with, that we talked about, all the expenses that come when you own your own business, and the emotional roller coaster that goes. People want to be part of a bigger vision. So that's exactly what I've done in my own business on this journey, is that I've paid for external support and other people's expertise. So I've had business coaches, which you upgrade them as well. I've upgraded business coach. I've done courses, so mentoring programs where I learn about more and more detail about high level, about what I guess high level, but also more detail around building sales funnels and marketing funnels, and um, you know tagging databases and building your mail list and all this sort of, stuff that's important when it comes to the marketing side. And then, so then you have, that's the external help. So the coaches and automation, and then you have consultants. So I've hired consultants that will help implement, right? Because coaches will tell you what you need to do, but they're not going to help you do it, right? They'll keep you accountable and remind you that you have to do stuff. But if you're already busy and you've got a big list of things to do, it actually just adds on more pressure. And you're like, actually, this is actually hard for me to dedicate time because I'm trying to juggle clients and stuff and do all this. So I hire consultants that will actually go into my business and basically become a part of it for a period of time. So I've had consultants that come in and build out my systems because I don't know how to systemize things properly. They've used the framework and they've worked with my staff to actually create the systems and map them out. So, and they keep my staff accountable and create them, you see? So, and I've had other consultants that have actually also mapped out my process and step by step, and then gone into my actual CRM and actually created the tasks so that they come up for the staff members, and then for my staff, my support staff, and then also given them training as well, whether that's video or support where I'm not even present. They train my staff. And then I've had another consultant that's also trained my virtual assistant to do my podcast distribution because I didn't know how to do that. So someone else would actually train my virtual assistant to actually post it all on the socials, how to create, captions and hashtags and all this sort of stuff. I don't know how to do that. So I get someone else to teach them. Right. Um, and then, yeah, I guess that's pretty much the other people's expertise, other people's time and team. It's just hanging in there, right? I've had to lose people, right? Like I've had people that I've like staff that overseas that I've come on, I've committed time, 3 months. They said they were in it with me and then they quit and they got another job. Another one did it again. Third time, I finally got someone who I'm super glad, and he's been with me for a year and a half. And I have literally trained everything that I used to do, which was the loan writing stuff for the mortgages. And I record it, I record it all on Zoom, and then I save the Zoom videos in a Google Drive library, so he can always watch them. And I've done that with the past one, so he can watch the past one. So that's how I've done it as well. So yeah, I hope that gives you some context.
Oh, that gives me context, Victor. I like it gives me context, it gives me life. Yeah, the as you're talking, it's quite lovely to hear this because it's I hadn't heard of the other ones. I had heard of other people's money, but that was it. Um, and I really enjoyed the way that you you what I really took from there that felt really like I'm like, oh, I really want to bring this in is the consultant part and like using the consultants to help bring in not just complete projects, but also like to like take over parts of what you were doing and help your ongoing team be able to be successful there. Right. So it's like, all right, I can bring in someone to be fractionally me, right? In this regard, they can figure out these components and then teach it over. And there was one last thing that really caught to me, and then we'll have to wrap up this conversation here. Um, but it was really good to hear you say like, "Well, I don't know how to do that," because I don't know how to do that. Like, and I was like, my favorite superheroes, right? Or like anything that's like fantastical and all that stuff. I love all the people who have the abilities to like take or mirror other people's skills. I read like a Korean manhwa. I'm like, oh, the 25th night from this movie Tower, from this manhwa Tower of God. I'm like, he gets hit by something, he gets their power. You see Rogue, or like there was a US show called Heroes on NBC for a long time, and someone could like they were all just taking they just the people I'm like the people who can use everyone's powers, like those are it. And yet, because what's happening right now is you're playing two things are playing inside of me. One of them is like that superhero power. If I want to be a superhero, that's where I go. Um, but on the other side of it is I watched the Marvel movies, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I realized like, oh, I want to build my own team of Avengers. And I might like, like let's go find like that's what the business is about. Like let's help Outliers basically go out, assemble the world's best outliers and whatever my current level is, and above. And let's go do things that only we can do, and then we'll keep playing from there. I thought I was Captain America, and I said that to someone. It was in my sphere, and she said back to me, she's like, "You're not Captain America, Niiamah." I was like, "What?" She's like, "No, you're Nick Fury." And that was like a huge thing for me where I was like you're right. Like I care about assembling the Avengers. I could be a normal human, but I
Mm.
would love to like get these people together and be like, so now that you're here, what do we want to do with it? You know?
Yeah.
And so like so when you talked about like I don't know how to do that, I realized like I'm like, am I playing the superhero who needs to have every single skill and say, if you want to come into my world, I can help you with everything? Or do I want to play more like Nick Fury and be like, don't worry, I'm running this. Avengers, as much as you're the blockbuster thing that you are, you're just a part of my ego. I have to direct the whole rest of Shield. This is just like
Good.
one project, this is one initiative that I have. This is not
Yeah.
even all of it.
Yeah.
And there's something in what you're saying there that's just getting me to as I go and I spend time to get back into my self-image, and to see how I want to use my RAS and so on and so forth. I think there's something really important there around like changing the viewpoint of me as superhero or me with having to know it all or do it all or teach it all or whatever it is, and instead step
Yeah.
back into that place of like, I'm here to assemble, and then y'all just
Love it.
y'all are gonna make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is the skill of like one of the powerful skills of an entrepreneur is actually being able to assemble good people and get them all working in a way that is collaborative and supportive, and everyone participates, and being, but also just being okay when like people outgrow you or it's not in alignment with them. You're not forcing people and saying I'm the boss and do what I say. Like that's not the way to operate as an entrepreneur. People have to
Right.
buy into the vision because they believe in that greater vision and mission that you're on, and they are on that same mission for themselves in their own life. I'm on the financial freedom journey. So everyone that comes into my space is also on the financial freedom journey, and they are learning and they are growing and they are becoming more financially free, not just from the money that I pay them, but from the people that they get to connect with and build other relationships with within the network, and from the learnings that they get from the podcast, from the content that they're researching. It's like everybody wins, and I think that's the fun part, is actually helping people to become better versions of themselves because they're within the ecosystem. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a wonderful place for us to wrap up for today. Victor, let us know. I'm gonna end up with two quick things here. One, uh, if someone wants to continue down your world, if they want to spend more time with you in any capacity here, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, there's two ways. One is to find my podcast on, if you search on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes, it's called Debt to Financial Freedom. And you'll also find me on my website, which is lagosfinancial.com.au. And you'll be able to even get to the podcast from there too. And if you're not based in Australia and you have access to capital and you want to look at opportunities to invest into growth properties and consider everything around risks and putting money aside and taking on lending from a financial institution in Australia, my team can help you with that. So just yeah, book a call through the website and we'll do a discovery call and see what's possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like as a result of this conversation, that might become a part of people's like images, like oh wait, like I own property in multiple countries, like so I love how that all that works together. All right, so we're gonna do this here. I like to end on with what I call the time capsule question. And the time capsule question goes like this. It's not about looking backwards, but it's actually about leaving a message right now for your future self. Let's say that in 10 years from now, you were going to come back and get a video and it was you talking to you. What's the message that you would want to remind yourself, that you want to make sure that like the person 10 years from now doesn't forget?
Yeah, good question. So I would say just be who you actually are, and don't try to be who you think the world wants you to be. Just be you. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And with that, like, I want to thank you, Victor. Thank you for being you here. Thank you for bringing you, and thank you for bringing us all closer to both the we that we are right now, as well as stepping into who we are becoming, in alignment with that. I appreciate you. I I just feel honored. Right. I'm grateful for you. Be well.
Thank you, Niiamah. Really appreciate it.